Hi, I'm Ruby Claire, and I'm here to do a demo for you on turning. I've been turning now for over 40 years. I do mostly commercial turning, and I do a lot of teaching. Every now and then I take a turning vacation so that I can learn and do some turning for myself. What we're going to turn today, oh, and by the way, I have Rob Summerlin is on the camera filming this. He's from Woodsley Summercrafts, so if there are any screw-ups, it's all his fault.
Very good, very good.
Okay, we're going to turn a mushroom. Mushrooms are a very good skill builder for beginner intermediate turners. They can be a challenge, I found, for some advanced turners. These were turned from just a simple branch of a tree, say 2, 3, 4 inches in diameter. Mushrooms come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So if you take a look, if you want to make this real narrow and take it down to 1/8 of an inch, you could have done that. What we're going to do today is turn mushroom like this from a Banksia pod. Now these pods, when you get them, they look like this. And they're basically like a pine cone from the Banksia tree, which grows in the western part of Australia. And they're quite an interesting material to turn from, and it'll challenge your skills to use something other than wood, because these take a delicate touch. Now when you take the pod and you cut the end of it off, okay, which I've done on the bandsaw, you can see that it does have a somewhat hard core on the inside, but it has a lot of this soft fuzzy stuff here on the outside. Okay, so I'm going to mount this between centers. I don't particularly have to center the area, just kind of guesstimate. Just like a piece of wood, make sure it's tight. Before you do anything, make sure that it's spinning clear, it's not hitting your tool rest at all. Now, the way I'm going to approach this one, I'm going to make this the bottom, and I'm going to make this the top. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to, after I put a tenon on here so it can go in the chuck, I want to be able to do the underside of the mushroom, okay, right here, because I'm right-handed. So for me to get in here is quite easy. If you were left-handed, this would likely be an easier angle for you to come in and turn it, okay? Now, so the first thing I want to do is make a small cut here and create my tenon over here. And to do that, I'm going to use my beading parting tool. Now, this is a really nice tool. It's about 1/4 inch square. Rob thinks it's a 1/2 inch. Well, we're both wrong. It's 3/8 square.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a 3/8 square. But what's nice about it, I can use it as a parting tool, okay, if I use it in this position. And I can also roll beads with it. Okay, so it's a very useful, versatile tool. Now, 2 things you want to do, 3 things actually, before you even start turning. As I mentioned, you turn it by hand, make sure that it's clear. Second thing you always do is turn your speed all the way to its lowest setting. And third, make sure you wear a face shield. I don't care how experienced a turner you are, these are invaluable. Okay, so I'm going to turn the lathe on now. Bring the speed up. I'm turning about 1930 right now. With the beading parting tool, I'm going to come in on the back end and make one cut just to even it off. The width of this tool I find works to be the width of my chuck jaws. So I go in so I'm just far enough down that I'm through most of the fuzzy stuff. Now what I like about this tool is that, and that's a feature I wanted to mention before, that I have dovetails on my jaws on the Nova 3. So to create the dovetail, all I do is once I've gone in square, I turn the tool a little bit to the left like this, push it in, and it will naturally create that dovetail that I want for the jaws. So, I come in square, I turn it a little bit, and I've created my dovetail. Now I know that the center point on the headstock is going to take up a bit of the wood. Okay, so I'm going to come in a little bit with the headstock in. Because I know that the points are going to come in and it gives me somewhere for parting it off later. Okay, so now that I have these areas defined, I have a better idea of what size mushroom I'm going to end up with. So what I want to do is decide, okay, where do I want this natural edge to be on this piece? So usually if you divide it into thirds, you want 1/3 and 2/3, okay? It's just balances better, it's the rule of thirds. So somewhere in around here is where I want to make my first cut to identify where this is going to be, okay? And to make the first edge of that, I'm going to use the beading parting tool again. So make sure it's still clear. So I'm going to just come in with the tool and if you wiggle it a little bit, okay, when that happens, bring your tail center in a little tighter, turn your speed up a little more. So now I'm about 2300. Okay. Then what I'll do is take my spindle gouge and I'm going to start shaping the head. Now, if you're more comfortable with a bowl gouge, there's nothing says you can't use that as well. When I come in with the bowl gouge, the back end of the bevel goes in at 90 degrees. Now the tool rest is a little bit high for this tool. When your tool is on center, you can see the little fuzzies are already coming up. Now you see how this piece is sticking out a lot further than say here or that? That's what's going to give a character when it's done. So it's still clear. Turn it back on. My bevel's at 90 degrees. Okay, a little bit lower. And I wouldn't come in any closer to the chuck than that at this time. Okay, so take a look. So we've got somewhat of a shape. Oh, we have somebody still living in there. That's okay. They'll come out. Alright, so now I'm going to work on the back end of it. Having established now where our division it will be between the top part and the bottom part, I'm going to take this away and start shaping the bottom part. Before you turn the lathe on, make sure everything is clear. Okay. That's the worst part about turning on a gouge. We managed to get a lot of these little pieces flying off, and you can see the fluff that's on there. Okay, so I'm just going to refine this down a little further. Okay, I upped the speed. I'm about 2800 now. Doesn't really have a grain direction, which makes it an interesting wood to work with. I'm switching now to the spindle gouge. And I don't use it very often, but I will use the carbide tool here as well, just a small bit. And this material coats being cut with carbide very nicely. Well, I'm not a big fan of carbide tool. Because they're basically staples. And I find that carbides don't work really well on softer woods. On hard woods, which is what they were designed for, they're superior. But you can see that's coming to shape quite nicely. So I'll do a little more on the inside. And all I'm aiming for here is a nice gentle little curve. Okay. So I think that's curved it in quite enough there. What I've done now is I've turned it around and put it into the chuck. Before I turn it on, I make sure that everything is clear. What I'm going to do is refine the very top part now and take it so I can take the tailstock off. And then what I'll do is start refining the base and get ready to part it off. Okay? So it's all clear. Okay. As I said, the shapes of the tops are entirely individual. Okay, what I'm doing here is, if you were to look at my flute and consider this 12 o'clock, okay, I'm cutting at about 1 o'clock. So I start with the flute up, I roll it to about 1 o'clock, and come around. Okay, so let's see what we've got going there. Okay, so let that chap living in there. Okay, so now I'll take a little bit more off of here, and then I'm going to come back here. So. Always turn the lathe off before you move the tool rest. And always turn it before you actually. Okay, so now I'm going to get ready to part it off. Well, actually I'll refine the shape of it. Now this is where you have to use some of your own creative abilities. You may want all of this fuzzy right here, and you may want to leave it on and leave it this fat. And I'm not going to stand here and say to you, you know, no, you got to take it all the way down like I did on this one, okay, where it's, you can see it's all smooth. If you want to leave all the fuzzies there, leave them. That's entirely a personal choice, okay? And that's the nice thing about making these. Okay, so I'm just taking a little dental pick. And using the dental pick, I can take some of these little fuzzies out that are some of the seeds that are still in here. Okay. Wish they were whole seeds, and then I'd try growing them, although I don't think our climate is quite suited to it. I think that needs a little warmer climate. Wouldn't it be neat to have a tree full of these in your backyard?
Mm-hmm.
Ready source.
Might take a few years.
Might take a few years, right. Alright, Rob had asked me before we stopped where I got my Banksia pods from, and the last place I ordered them from was Exotic Woods in Burlington. Now before I go very much further, what I'd like to do is just do a bit of sanding. So I'll just grab my sandpaper, and the material cuts quite nicely and it sands quite nicely. Now normally when I'm working here at my shop I would have my dust extractor going, but for purposes of filming, so that you can actually hear me, I've got it turned off. If any of the materials bother you in any way, shape, or form, by all means wear a respirator of some sort. Feels kind of funny as you're sanding to realize you don't have a grain direction like you do in wood. So I'm starting out, I just have a piece of 80 grit at the moment. Okay, I'm going to switch now to 100. You notice I'm being very careful when I come up to do this underside, and that's mainly because those are sharp edges, and I really don't want to have to break open my first aid kit. Okay, moving up to a little finer grit. Now if you were doing this out of a branch of a tree, such as when I did one of these, okay, what I would do is after each grit sanding, I would stop the lathe and then go like this in the direction of the grain, okay. With this material, because it doesn't have a grain as such, and the sandpaper's not leaving any circular marks on it, I don't feel I have to do that. Okay. Okay, we'll use some 180 at this point. Now, how fine you sand this, that's up to you. When you think it feels smooth, looks smooth, and you're happy with it, then you're done. .220. And this is a good item for if you're selling your stuff at craft fairs and that, because it's not something that can be bought anywhere. And I'll do one last one. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, I'm not unhappy with that. It's going to be quite different from my other one. I've left a little bit of the furry stuff, which won't be quite as soft as it is now once I put the finish on. Now, if you were doing a wooden one at this point, if you wanted to use a finish such as the Yorkshire Grit and Hampshire Sheen, you could apply it, okay? I would not use it on this material for the simple reason that the waxes and that would get caught in all of these pores that are here. And then you'd have to dig them all out later, which is kind of a pain. I find just taking this and very carefully using a spray lacquer works extremely well. Now, take this out so I don't stab myself with it. I hope you notice the nice little tray I made for the back end of my lathe. Okay, it's all clear. Now I'm going to part it off. And I'm using the Sorby parting tool. The tool has a flute here on the top. You only sharpen this little bit. I have had students sharpen my flute right off. This one I don't let them have. When I go to part this off, okay, I'll be parting it off here right down near the chuck. I'm going to reach around like this so I can hold on to it. Now, the way this is designed, there's nothing here to get caught on the sleeves of this jacket whatsoever. And this way I make sure that I have a good grip on it when it comes off. What I don't want to do is get my fingers touching this ragged edge as it's coming along, or it would get colored nice red, okay? So, turn the speed up a bit. Okay. And the same as if I was doing any other wood that I was trying to take off, I'm going to try to undercut it a little bit. Now I'm looking at that and I'm saying, I want a little more shape in here. Okay. Just hit that with a little bit of sandpaper. Okay, so holding it here. And what I'm doing with the tool is I'm making one cut, one beside it, to keep it wide enough that the tool won't bind. Whoops. Oh well. Well, that happens sometimes when you part it off. I was trying to be a little conservative because I didn't want to lose my fingers. Okay, if you use a drill with the sanding pad, so there we have our little mushroom. It's a little on the gray side at the moment, but once you hit it with the lacquer spray, you can see how it turns a nice dark rich reddish brown. And by leaving this edge being larger than other areas, it gives it a much more natural sort of a look. And the same thing when you're trying to do one out of a branch. Like if you look at this one and you look from the side, this side sticks out further than this side does. So when you mount it in the lathe, you can even mount it slightly off-center to give that effect. This base might be a little bit thick, maybe half as much would be fine, but I wanted to use where the branch went in here and over here as kind of an accent part, and it sort of gives it some foundation somewhere to sit, as if it's growing out of the ground. Okay? And that's basically how you turn a mushroom, whether it's out of a branch or out of one of these Banksia pods. What I really encourage you to do is to try a material like this, mainly because it's something totally different and it'll teach you a different tool control. And then once you've made one or two, start making different shapes. You can make them with very long, thin, narrow tops. If you make them out of green wood, that works even better. And you can make them, these aren't dry, otherwise I could have gone smaller. But with green wood, you can come right in on the neck through here, and you can take these down to 1/8 of an inch and make them, you know, with real long skinny stems, like some of the mushrooms that you find. Alright, and thanks again to Rob for being the cameraman. And if you have any questions, I'm here and willing to answer them.